Single mom calls the mafia boss by mistake unaware. He hears her baby crying on the phone. The smell of damp plaster and old rain was baked into the walls of the room. It was the smell of Greyhaven, of the Harbor Line Keys, of my life. I, Mara Klein, 24 years old and feeling every minute of it, pressed the heel of my hand into my burning eye socket. Below the cracked window, the 315 freight train screamed, shaking the floorboards, rattling the one good cup I owned on the shelf. And my daughter cried. Piper, at 9 months old, had a cry that was thin and sharp, full of a misery that felt too big for her tiny body. It was a fever cry, the kind that sliced right through a mother's exhaustion and went straight for the panic. "Shh, baby, shh," I whispered, my voice raw. I paced the small strip of warped floor between the kitchenette and the cot. "Mama's here. I know it hurts. Shh." But she was inconsolable. Her skin was hot, her little fists bunched, and her wails synchronized with the drumming of rain on the tin roof. It was a symphony of desperation. I had just gotten back from my night shift at the Second Son thrift shop, my bones aching from sorting other people's discarded lives, only to find my own life was coming apart. Piper had been fine when I left her with Mrs. Petrov 2 floors down, and now she was burning up. I had given her the last of the infant medicine. It did nothing. My gaze fell on the crumpled flyer on the counter, the Shepherd's Hand Rent Assistance Line, run by the local church. My rent was 3 days late. My landlord, Mr. Kozlov, had already made it clear that a sick baby was not his problem. "You pay, or you walk," he'd said, his eyes lingering on the lock. I needed help, not just for the rent, but for this, for the fever. Maybe the church line. Maybe they had a nurse. Maybe they could tell me what to do. My hands were shaking, fumbling with the cheap, cracked screen of my phone. I punched in the number from the flyer, my vision blurry. One wrong digit, just one. The line clicked. It rang once, twice. Then, a click. Not a voicemail. Not a cheerful shepherd's hand. How can we help? Silence. A thick, heavy silence that felt like a vault. "Hello," I whispered, my voice trembling. At that exact second, Piper arched her back in my arms and let out a piercing shriek of pain and fever. The freight train chose that moment to blast its horn, a long, mournful sound that vibrated in my chest. A voice finally came through the phone, and it was nothing like a church. It was low, like gravel wrapped in velvet. "Who is this?" It was not a question. I froze. I'm looking for the shepherd's hand," I stammered. Another pause, shorter this time. I could hear the expensive quiet on his end. No rain, no trains, just the sound of his breathing. Then, Piper wailed again. A gasping, desperate sound. The man's voice changed. It didn't get louder, but it sharpened, cutting through my panic. "Where is the child?" "What? Who is this? I'm sorry. I must have the wrong number." I was backing away, as if he could see me through the phone. He sounded cold, dangerous, a scammer, the kind that preys on people like me. "The baby," he said, and this time, the coldness was gone, replaced by an unnerving calm, a strange authority. "Her cry is wet. She's choking on it." I slammed the end call button, my heart hammering against my ribs. My hand flew to my mouth. He was right. Piper's cries were ending in a wet, rattling gasp. How could he know that? I stared at the phone, willing it not to ring again. It did not. Instead, a text message lit up the screen, an unknown number. "Warm cloth on the back of her neck. If she's struggling to breathe, open a window for 3 minutes." That was it. No, who is this? No, sorry about that. Just a command. It was insane. It was dangerous. He was a stranger who had listened to my daughter cry, but the specificity of it, the back of her neck, the 3 minutes. Piper coughed, a terrible barking sound, and her face went a shade redder. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "Okay." I ran a washcloth under the hot tap until it steamed, wrung it out, and rushed back to Piper. I laid the cloth gently across the back of her tiny, damp neck. She startled, whimpered, but then she seemed to lean into the heat. Her tense little body relaxed by a fraction. I went to the window, my fingers struggling with the swollen wooden frame, and forced it open a few inches. The cold, rain-washed air of the harbor line quays cut through the room's damp heat. It smelled of the ocean and diesel. I held Piper by the open window, her back to my chest, for exactly 3 minutes. The train had passed. The rain had softened to a drizzle, and Piper's breathing, which had been a ragged, gasping fight, eased. It was still fast, still too hot, but the wet, choking sound was gone. She let out a long, shuddering sigh, and her head grew heavy on my shoulder. My knees felt weak with a relief so profound it was painful. I closed the window, laid Piper in her cot, and tucked the warm cloth back into place. She whimpered, but didn't wail. I picked up my phone. I had to know. I called the number back. He answered on the first ring. Is she better? Again, not a question. Yes, I breathed. How did you know? Who are you? What's your doctor's name? A soft huff, almost a laugh, but with no humor in it. I am not a doctor. Then who are you? Why did you help? The line was silent for a long moment. I heard the faint click of a lighter, the soft exhale of smoke. He said, his voice dropping to that low, velvety rumble again. Can't stand the sound of a child crying alone. A shiver went down my spine that had nothing to do with the draft. Thank you, I said, my voice small. Thank you. I'm sending someone. My blood ran cold. No, you are not. Don't you dare. I don't know you. I don't want your help. What is your address? I'm not telling you, I yelled, suddenly terrified again. Stay away from us. You live near the tracks. The 315 freight shakes the building, but the horn is delayed, which means you're not right on the line. You're 3, maybe 4 blocks west. I heard the Tico's ice cream truck vendor's jingle, the one that announces his plate number. He only services the Harbor Line quays at night. You're in one of the old tenements on Harbor Line, overlooking the water. Am I wrong? I couldn't speak. I was holding my breath. He had heard all of that. In the 30 seconds we were on the phone, he had dissected my life from the background noise. I am sending a nurse, he said, his voice flat. She is from the Starlit Ward Private Service. Her name is Aviva. She will be there in 10 minutes. Do not be afraid of her. She is there for the child. How will she get in? I whispered, defeated. The front door is locked. I'm not buzzing anyone in. She will not need to be buzzed in, he said, and he hung up. I stared at the phone. 10 minutes. I looked at Piper, sleeping fitfully. I looked at the door to my apartment with its flimsy lock. How could he know about the ice cream truck? Who was this man? 8 minutes later, there was a soft, firm knock. Not the pounding of a landlord, not the scuttling of a neighbor. A professional knock. I looked through the peephole. A woman stood there, tall and lean, in crisp navy blue scrubs that said Starlit Ward. She had a calm face and dark hair pulled into a tight bun. She was carrying a black medical bag. She did not look like she belonged in this building. Miss Klein, she called, her voice clear. I opened the door on the chain. How did you get in the front door code? It was provided, she said simply, her eyes finding Piper in the cot. May I come in, mister? Carminati sent me to check on the baby. Carminati. The name meant nothing to me, but the power behind it was obvious. I had never heard of Starlit Ward. I had never heard of a nurse who could get through a locked tenement door in the middle of the night. I unhooked the chain. She was all business. She was gentle with Piper, her hands quick and sure. She took her temperature, checked her lungs with a small stethoscope, and gave her a different kind of medicine from a small, unmarked vial. She was a beacon of clean, quiet efficiency in my dirty, chaotic life. It's a bad fever, but it's not pneumonia, she said, packing her bag. This will keep her comfortable and help her fight it. She needs fluids when she wakes. Just water is fine. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. How much do I owe you? She smiled, a small, tight smile. It's been taken care of. Get some sleep. Miss Klein, you both look like you need it." She let herself out, the click of the lock echoing in the quiet room. Piper was sleeping, not the fitful, feverish sleep from before, but a deep, peaceful sleep. The redness was gone from her cheeks. Her breathing was even. My phone, clutched in my hand, buzzed with a call, the same number. I answered. "She is sleeping," I said before he could speak. "Good." His voice was low, softer now. "Who are you?" I asked again. "It does not matter." "How did you open my building?" "Locks are just suggestions. Mara." He knew my name. The nurse must have told him. A cold dread, sharp and acidic, rose in my throat, battling with the wave of gratitude. I felt trapped. I felt seen. I did not know which was worse. "Don't call me again," I whispered. "I will not, but do not turn off the ringer." "Why?" There was a long pause. I heard the rain start up again, a gentle tapping on the glass. "I'll just listen," he whispered, and the words seemed to bypass the phone and form directly in my ear. "If tonight gets too hard..." He hung up. I sat on the floor, my back against the cold plaster, and watched my daughter sleep. The ringer stayed on. The morning light was the color of dirty water. It seeped through the window and laid a gray film over the room. Piper's fever had broken in the night, a mercy I hadn't dared to pray for. She was asleep in her cot, her breathing finally even. The medicine from the phantom nurse, holding. My own body felt hollowed out, my bones replaced with glass. Leaving her to go to work felt like tearing off my own skin. But the rent was not a suggestion. I locked my door, the flimsy chain, the deadbolt I knew was useless, and walked down the hall. He was waiting. Mr. Kozlov, smelling of stale onions and cheap cigars, blocked the stairwell. "4 days, Miss Klein," he said, his voice a wet rasp. "Cash, today." "I get paid Friday," I said, my voice flat. "I told you that." He smiled, a brown-toothed expression. "Friday is not today. You and the baby. You make a lot of noise, a lot of disturbance." My stomach tightened. "She's been sick. She's a baby." "Meridian Residential Control," he said, tapping his temple. "They do not like disturbances. They do not like noise complaints. They do not like single mothers who cannot control their environment. One call from me, and they will inspect, and they will find. You understand?" He was threatening to have Piper taken away. He was using my child as leverage for $75. "I will have it Friday," I said, my voice a low, dangerous thing I didn't recognize. I pushed past him, his onion smell coating my clothes. The second son was my sanctuary, if a place full of mothballs and other people's ghosts could be called that. I spent the morning sorting bags of donations, the clinking of hangers a rhythm to my simmering rage. At 11, the front bell chimed. It was her, the nurse, Aviva. She was not in scrubs. She was in plain, dark trousers and a fitted jacket, her hair still in that severe bun. She was carrying a large, expensive-looking duffel bag. "Donation," she said, her voice as crisp as it had been at 3 a.m. She didn't smile. "We take bags in the back," I said, my heart starting a slow, heavy drumbeat. "This one is for you," she said. She placed the bag on the counter, unzipped it, and began pulling out stacks of high-end, barely worn baby clothes, designer labels I had only ever seen on celebrities. "These are surplus." "I can't accept these," I said. "They are not for you. They are for the child." She continued to empty the bag, piles of soft cashmere and cotton. Then, from the very bottom, she pulled a plain manila envelope. She slid it across the counter. My name was not on it. I looked at her. "Mr. Carminati believes in situational awareness," she said. I opened the flap. Inside were photographs, not glossy but sharp, clear. Nighttime shots, Mr. Kozlov in the alley behind our building. He was shaking hands with 2 men. Men with hard faces and tailored suits that looked out of place against the dumpsters. On the arm of one man, a small tattoo, a stylized, burning skull. The Caldera Trust. I knew the name from the whispers in the keys. They were the ones who burned people out, who bought properties no one was selling. "Your landlord is making a bad deal," Aviva said quietly, watching me. "He's selling his tenant list, specifically tenants with vulnerabilities, children, the elderly, people Meridian Control loves to inspect." My blood turned to ice. "What do you want?" She pulled a folded document from her jacket pocket. It was not thick. "This is a temporary protection contract. It is not a loan. No money will be exchanged. It stipulates in very clear terms that there are no emotional obligations." Her eyes were clear, direct. "It is an agreement for services." "What services?" "We will install a new security doorbell. We will have someone outside your door, on the street, until this is resolved. The nurse," she nodded, as if speaking of a third person, "will be allowed to check on Piper one more time." I pushed the paper back. "I don't sign things. I don't know you. I don't know him." Aviva looked at me for a long moment. She did not seem angry or frustrated. She seemed to be cataloging me. She folded the paper and put it back in her pocket. Then she picked up her empty duffel bag. "Signing is optional," she said. "We're still watching the door tonight." She turned and left, the bell over the door, her only goodbye. That night, the apartment felt like a trap. I put Piper to bed, my hands shaking. The photos were in my pocket, burning a hole. Kozlov, the Caldera Trust. I had to know. After 9, I heard voices in the hall. Kozlov, his wheedling tone, and 2 others, deeper, rougher, the men from the photos. I turned off my light, crept to the door, and pressed my ear against the cold, peeling paint. "Just the list," one of the rough voices said. "We do the rest. Meridian gets an anonymous tip. The building is flagged, and your problem tenants are relocated. We buy the building clean. And the girl, the one in 3B, Kozlov, she's trouble. Especially her, a single mother, a sick kid. She's the perfect unfit case. Meridian will have her out by sunrise. We'll be in before she is." I fell back, my hand over my mouth to keep from being sick. They were going to use the city to take Piper from me. My phone vibrated in my pocket, the unknown number. I answered, my throat too tight to speak. "You don't owe me," Valentino's voice said. It was just as I remembered, low and wrapped in shadow. "But don't be alone when they knock." The line went dead. I stared at the door. He knew. He knew they were coming. At 11:04, the single bulb in my kitchen flickered twice and died. The building was plunged into absolute, oppressive darkness. The hum of the ancient refrigerator cut out. They had cut the power. I was frozen. I could hear Piper's soft, sleeping breaths from the cot. I would not let them take her. I grabbed the heaviest skillet I owned and moved toward the door. Then the pounding, not a knock, a fist, heavy, splintering. "Miss Klein Meridian Residential Control, we have a complaint of an unsecured child." "Lies, all of it." "Open the door, or we will be forced to remove it." My breath was gone. I was vibrating, trapped. A sudden, blindingly bright white light flooded the hallway from a source I could not see. It flashed once, twice. An emergency light. Where had that come from? At the same time, my phone chimed. Not a call, a notification. Orchid Security is active. I fumbled with the phone. Opening it, the screen showed a video feed. From my doorway, a new dark circle had been installed where my peephole used to be. I was seeing the hallway, clear as day, in a stark, night vision green. 3 men, Kozlov, cowering by the stairs, and the 2 men from the photos. A speaker icon on the screen was active, and through my phone, I heard Valentino Carminati's voice, calm, analytical, as if he were watching a football game. "The third man's left hand is shaking," he said. "He's about to pull a knife." As he spoke, the man closest to my door, the one who was not pounding, twitched his left hand under his jacket. I didn't even have time to scream. From the shadows of the stairwell, a place the camera did not see a blur of motion, it was Aviva. She was not a nurse. She was a ghost in dark clothes. She moved like a dancer, all speed and brutal efficiency. There was no sound. A hand to the first man's throat. A twist. He crumpled. The second man, the one with the shaking hand, barely had time to pull the knife before she had his arm, and I heard a sickening, wet snap. He went down, silent, his mouth open in a scream that never came. It was over in less than 5 seconds. No blood, no gunfire, just removal. Kozlov had wet himself, a dark stain spreading on his trousers. Aviva looked at him, and he slid to the floor, unconscious from sheer terror. She straightened her jacket, looked directly at the new doorbell, at the camera, at me, and gave a small, sharp nod. And then I was looking at him. His face filled my phone screen. He had ended the video feed and was now video calling me. This was the first time I'd seen him. He was not what I expected. He was younger. His eyes were dark, his face a sharp collection of angles and shadows, beautiful and severe. He looked, I thought, like a fallen saint carved from marble. He was watching me, his expression unreadable, cold as glass. From the cot, Piper stirred. She let out a small, sleepy sigh, a puff of milk-scented air. I watched his face. His eyes, which had been so cold, so distant, flickered. He heard her. The ice did not melt. It did not break. But something shifted. A faint, almost invisible easing of the tension around his mouth, a fractional change. He had heard the sound of a child, not in pain, but safe. And that, it seemed, was all he needed. The call ended. The screen went black. I was alone in the dark again, but I was not. The emergency light in the hall was still on, a single, steady beam pointing the way out. The power was back on. But the air in the apartment was thick with the ghost of last night's violence. I hadn't slept. I had sat in the dark, my phone in my hand, watching the black screen, waiting for it to light up. It never did. When the gray light of morning came, it brought a suffocating restlessness. I had to get out. I needed air that did not smell of Kozlov's fear and Aviva's silent, lethal efficiency. I bundled Piper into her stroller, her face pale but her fever gone, and headed for the only place in Grey Haven that felt more chaotic than my own mind, the Fogwheel Seafood Market. Aviva was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. She was no longer a nurse, no longer a phantom. She was a fact. She simply nodded and fell into step 2 paces behind me and to the left, a silent walking wall. The fogwheel was alive. The air was a sharp, cold sting of salt, fish guts, and diesel. Men in heavy boots shouted over the roar of ice machines, their voices like gravel. It was a place of work, of grit, and for a moment I could almost pretend I was normal, just a mom taking her baby for a walk. I pushed the stroller over the wet cobblestones, Piper's eyes wide at the hanging nets and the flash of silver scales. It happened in the space of a heartbeat. A black, mud-splattered pickup truck, the kind with illegal tinted windows, shot out of an alleyway, its engine roaring. It was not slowing down. It was aiming for us. I froze. Time stopped. I saw the glint of the sun on the grill. I did not scream. Aviva did not move. She simply acted. She grabbed me by the shoulder and the stroller's handle in one liquid, brutal motion and slammed us back into the narrow space between a brick wall and a mountain of wooden crab pots. My head hit the brick. The stroller wheels shrieked. Piper let out a sharp, terrified cry. The truck sped past, missing us by inches, its horn blaring a mocking, angry laugh. It disappeared around the corner, leaving only the smell of its exhaust and a profound, vibrating silence. My heart was a trapped bird against my ribs. I was shaking, my hand locked on the stroller. "They're gone," a voice said. It was not Aviva. It was him, the man from the phone, the man from the video feed. Valentino Carminati. He was standing in front of us, where the truck had just been. He must have stepped out of the black sedan parked at the curb, a car so clean it looked alien on this street. He was not a phantom. He was flesh and blood. He was wearing a dark, perfectly tailored suit that cost more than my entire building. His hair was black. His face was all those angles I remembered, but in the harsh morning light, I could see the faint shadow of a scar near his left temple. He was a paradox too beautiful for this ugly street. And yet, he looked like he had been born from its shadows. He did not look at me. He did not ask if I was all right. He simply moved to the stroller. He crouched down, a long, graceful movement, until his expensive suit was in danger from the fish water on the cobblestones. He was eye level with my daughter. Piper was still crying, her face red, her fists clenched. Valentino Carminati just watched her for a second. Then very softly, he began to speak. It was not English. It was a low, melodic string of Italian words, more of a rhythm than a song, a quiet, ancient-sounding tune. Piper's cry faltered. She hiccuped, her blue eyes, so like mine, locking on his dark ones. He did not touch her. He did not reach for her. He just kept whispering that tune. Piper, my daughter, who shied away from strangers, who cried if the light was too bright, slowly unclenched her tiny fist. She reached out. Her fingers brushed the silk of his dark tie, the one held in place by a simple silver bar. She grabbed a fistful of it. He did not flinch. He did not pull away. He let her hold on, his eyes never leaving hers. The tune quieted to a hum, and Piper stopped crying. She made a small, cooing sound in the back of her throat and stared at him, fascinated. Only then did he straighten up. Only then did his gaze shift to me. Mara Klein. Hearing him say my name in person sent a jolt through me. It was the same voice, gravel and velvet, but now it had a body, and it was standing 3 feet away. I stammered. He reached inside his suit coat and pulled out a single, folded piece of paper. It was thick, creamy, and embossed with the official seal of the city of Greyhaven. "Your landlord will not be returning," he said, holding the paper out. "He has been detained on suspicion of fraud." I just stared at the paper. "This," he said with a note of impatience, "is for you. He'll be replaced by a city-appointed receiver. They will not honor his illegal eviction notice." I took the paper. It was a temporary emergency occupancy permit from Meridian Residential Control. My name was on it. It stated I was under municipal protection pending a building-wide safety review. It was dated yesterday. It was a perfect, official, and utterly false document. I looked up at him, my head swimming. "This isn't real." "It is real enough," he said. "It is registered. The receiver will see it. He will leave you alone." I don't want this," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't want my name in your books. I don't want to owe you anything." His face, which had shown a flicker of warmth for my daughter, went cold again. The marble settled back into place. "Your name isn't in my books," he said, his voice flat. "I write down the promises I've made." I had no answer to that. I could hear whispers from the market stalls. The fishmongers were watching. They knew who he was. They knew, and they were terrified. They said the Orchid Union was trying to make peace with the Vigilant Port Council, to go legitimate. But the Caldera Trust, the men from last night, wanted a war, and I was, somehow, standing in the middle of it. "Come," he said. It was not a request. He turned and walked to his car. Aviva, silent as ever, took the stroller from my numb grasp and followed him. I had no choice. I followed. Back in the apartment, the air was just as cold, but the fear was different. It was sharper. That afternoon, Piper's fever returned. It was low, just a slight, worrying heat, but the panic clawed at my throat. Aviva, who had been sitting on a hard-back chair by the door for 6 hours, stood up. "She needs the other medicine," she said. "I don't have any more." Aviva just touched the new, high-tech doorbell. 10 minutes later, the knock, I opened it. "Valentino?" He was standing in my hallway, the hallway that smelled of cabbage and urine and Mr. Kozlov's fear. He looked grotesque in this setting, his suit too fine, his stillness too profound. He did not step inside. He stayed on the welcome mat, a clear, unspoken boundary. "Aviva," he said. He was holding a small, sealed paper bag from a pharmacy I had never heard of. He handed it to her. Aviva, in turn, handed it to me. I opened it, a bottle of fever reducer, not the cheap, generic kind I bought. This was potent, fast-acting, and probably cost $50. "Give it to her," he said. "No," I whispered. He looked at me. His gaze was heavy, evaluating. He was not angry. He was waiting. "I will not make you," he said, his voice quiet. "I will not enter your home. I will not touch your child. It is your choice. You are her mother." And that was it. That was the moment I understood. He was not Kozlov, who used threats. He was not the Caldera Trust, who used violence. His power was different, It was the power of absolute control, the power to forge city documents, to make landlords disappear, to command silent killers like Aviva, and the power to stand in a dirty hallway and not force his will on a terrified 24-year-old mother. He was giving me the one thing no one else had the choice. He was waiting for me to step back, but I found myself, for the first time, wanting to step forward. I looked at the bottle. I looked at Piper, whimpering in her cot. I looked at him. I broke the seal on the bottle. Aviva spoke, her voice breaking the spell. "The wiring in this building is a fire hazard. The carbon monoxide alarms are 30 years out of date. We need to install new ones." I nodded, my throat tight. "Okay." Valentino Carminati watched me for 1 second longer. He had gotten what he came for. Not my submission. My permission. He turned, his polished shoes silent on the grimy linoleum, and walked away. I opened my mouth, the words "thank you" forming on my tongue, but he was already gone, disappearing into the shadows of the stairwell, leaving only the scent of expensive wool and cold, clean night air. The invitation was not a request, it was a statement. It came through Aviva, whose face remained perfectly neutral. "Mr. Carminati requests your presence for dinner. 7 o'clock. He's cooking. The Copper Finch, corporate kitchen." I almost laughed. Dinner. As if we were normal, but the new safe as a vault lock on my door and the absence of Mr. Kozlov from the building were not normal. The black sedan that picked us up was not normal. The Copper Finch was a gleaming tower of glass and reclaimed wood on the new, expensive side of the harbor. The restaurant itself was dark, the chairs stacked on tables. Aviva, however, led me and Piper, whom I carried in my arms, through a side door, down a sterile white hallway, and through a set of swinging steel doors. My world, which had been gray plaster and cracked linoleum, suddenly became a universe of warm, golden light and gleaming silver. The corporate kitchen was vast, an island of stainless steel counters in the center, copper pots hanging from a rack above, their surfaces reflecting the soft, yellow overhead lights like a dozen captured suns. It was clean, not just clean, but pristine, like a surgeon's theater, and it was warm. It smelled of simmering stock and something floral I could not place. Valentino was not in a suit. He wore dark trousers and a simple, black, long-sleeved Henley, the fabric pulling taut over his shoulders. The sleeves were pushed up to his elbows. He was standing at the center island, and he was not the marble saint of the hallway, nor the cold-eyed observer from the phone. He was a man, at work. "Mara," he said. His voice was different in here, softer. "Not having to compete with the city. This is a good spot." He indicated a professional-grade high chair, already set up at the end of the counter, a safe distance from the stovetops. I settled Piper into it. She looked around, her eyes wide, and banged her small fist on the tray, making a solid, satisfying thunk. A small smile touched Valentino's lips. It was a brief, almost invisible thing, but it changed his entire face. "She approves of the acoustics." "What is this?" I asked, my arms feeling empty, my gaze sweeping over the counters, which were already laid out with chopped vegetables, herbs and chicken. "Zuppa di pollo allo zafferano," he said. "My grandmother's. It's a curative for bad nights." He motioned for me to stand beside him. "You will help." "I burn water, Mr. Carminati." "Valentino," he corrected, his voice gentle. "And no, you will not. You will listen. That is all." He taught me. He did not order. He guided. He passed me a bundle of thyme, showed me how to strip the leaves. His hands were large, long-fingered, and steady. I saw the scar I had glimpsed at the market, a pale, silvery line that ran from his thumb across the back of his hand. It was an old wound. His movements were precise, economical, and patient. He taught me to chop the onions, not with force, but with the weight of the knife. "Let the steel do the work," he said, his voice a low rumble next to my ear. We moved around the small space, him adding ingredients to the heavy-bottom pot, me handing him things. It was a dance, a silent, awkward one at first. I was constantly aware of him, of the space he took up. I had spent my life making myself small, and he was the opposite. He was a solid, unmoving presence. But he never crowded me. When I turned to rinse a bowl, he was already stepping back, giving me a foot of air I had not even realized I needed. He never brushed against me, never let his hand linger near mine. He only watched. His attention was a physical thing, but it was not possessive. It was considerate. Piper began to babble, a string of happy, nonsensical ba-ba-da sounds. Valentino paused, a wooden spoon halfway to the pot. He turned his head. Piper grinned, showing her two bottom teeth, and shrieked with delight. His voice, when he spoke, had lost its edges. It was softer. The gravel washed away. "She has a strong opinion, just like her mother." "She is just happy to be warm," I said, my voice thick. "So am I," he said, and he looked at me, his dark eyes catching the yellow light. He was searing the chicken, the smell filling the room, rich and savory. He added the stock, and then the star. He took a small pinch of dark red threads from a tiny glass jar. "Saffron," he said, "the smell of home for me." He dropped them into the pot, and the air changed, becoming fragrant and complex. After a few minutes, he added a touch of heavy cream, turning the soup from gold to a pale, beautiful sunrise. He ladled a small amount into a bowl, then took a clean spoon and dipped it in, blowing on it softly. "Taste," he said. I leaned forward, my lips parting. He did not feed me. He held the spoon out for me to take, but I just sipped over the bowl. The soup was rich, the chicken tender, the saffron a warm, bright thread through it all. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. I couldn't find the word. "It's perfect." Almost. He was looking at my mouth. "What?" He did not speak. He picked up a clean, folded white linen napkin from the counter. He held it out. I just looked at him, confused. "You have," he said, and his voice was suddenly very quiet. "A little cream. Here." His other hand came up, his index finger raised, as if to point or perhaps to wipe it away himself. His fingers, the ones with the old scar, stopped. They hovered a breath away from my skin. A single trembling inch of air. I could feel the heat radiating from his hand. I saw his dark eyes track from my eyes to my mouth. He was not moving. He was waiting, giving me the choice. I could not breathe. I took the napkin from his other hand, my fingers brushing his. The contact was like an electric shock. I wiped my upper lip, my hand shaking. "Thank you," I whispered. The swinging doors opened, breaking the spell. Aviva stood there, her face impassive. "The harbor is clear," she said. "A good night for a walk." Valentino nodded, his expression once again controlled. "Take Piper. A walk by the water. She will like the lights." I bristled. "She's not going without me." "No," Aviva said. "She is not, but her mother and her mother's friend need to talk. She looked at me. 10 minutes, by the pier. You can see her from the window. I hesitated, but Aviva was already lifting a sleeping, milk-drunk Piper from the high chair with an expert, gentle hand. She was gone. The kitchen, which had felt warm and full, was suddenly vast and silent. Only the low hum of the massive refrigerators remained. I turned to Valentino. He was leaning against the counter, watching me, his arms crossed. The mask was back. "Who are you?" I asked, the words rushing out before I could stop them. Not this." I waved my hand at the kitchen, at his suit in the car, at Aviva. "Who are B when the phone is off, when you are not?" He was silent for a long time. He looked down at his scarred hand. "When I was a boy," he said, his voice so low I had to lean in. "Before this, before everything. I lived in a recreational vehicle with my mother, by the docks. She was not well. We moved every few nights. The only thing that was constant was the sound of the boat engines." He looked up, and his eyes were not in the kitchen. They were far away, in a cold RV by the water. "I was terrified. All the time. The vehicle would shake. Strangers would knock. And I learned," he said, his voice a raw whisper, "that I could not stop the shaking, but I could control my own heart. I would lie there, in the dark, and I would count the boats. I would match my heartbeat to the thrum of their diesel engines, in and out. 1, 2, 1, 2. I learned to make my heart slow down. I learned to be quiet. I learned to listen." He looked at me, his gaze finally coming back into focus. "You asked who I am. I am a man who counts the boats. That is all." My own heart was doing the opposite. It was hammering, a wild, painful rhythm against my ribs. He was not a monster. He was not a savior. He was a little boy in the dark who had learned to control his own fear. I stepped closer. He did not step back. "You heard me," I whispered, "that night on the phone. You did not just hear Piper. You heard me. I heard everything," and he breathed. I did not know what I was doing. I only knew that I had to. I raised my hand, not in a threat, not in a plea, but in a question. I laid my palm flat against his chest, right over his heart. The fabric of his shirt was soft. Beneath it, his body was solid, warm, and real. And his heart, the heart he had trained his entire life to control, was hammering. It was fast. It was wild. It was matching mine. His gaze dropped to my mouth. He looked at me, a question in his eyes. I gave a small, almost unconsciously. He leaned in slowly, giving me time to retreat, to change my mind. I did not. His lips touched mine. It was not a kiss of passion. It was not violent or demanding. It was slow and firm and overwhelmingly respectful. It was a kiss of shared breath, a question and an answer in one. His lips were soft, warm, and tasted faintly of saffron and coffee. One of his hands came up, not to grab me, not to pull me closer, but to rest gently on my jaw, his thumb brushing my cheekbone. It was a promise. My hand was still on his chest, feeling that rapid, uncontrolled beat. We pulled back at the same time. His eyes were dark, searching, and filled with a profound, startled surprise. I felt a bubble of something rise in my chest. It was not a laugh, not quite. I let out a shaky breath. He saw it, and the corner of his mouth I had seen smile at Piper twitched again. A small, shared, astonished laugh escaped him. We stood there, in the warm, golden kitchen, breathing in the scent of saffron, and for a second, we were just a man and a woman, surprised to find themselves, for the first time, in exactly the right place. The kiss was a memory that lived on my skin, a phantom warmth I carried back to my cold apartment. The new, heavy-duty deadbolt Aviva had installed clicked into place with a satisfying, metallic thunk. It was a sound of safety, a sound I hadn't realized I was starving for. For 3 days, there was silence. No threats, no landlords, no black trucks, just me and Piper, and the low, steady hum of the new carbon monoxide detector. It was the sound of a normal life. Then, on the fourth night, a buzz vibrated on the kitchen counter. It was not my new phone, the clean, simple one Aviva had given me. It was my old one, the one with the cracked screen, the one I kept for the photos of Piper's first week. I hadn't charged it in days, but it had just enough life for one last act of betrayal. A text message from an unknown number. "Keep the kid quiet if you want to keep your place." My blood turned to slush. I fumbled, my thumb smudging the screen. It was just words, a cruel joke. Then I saw a second message, just below it, an audio file attachment. My finger moved without my permission. The room, my quiet, safe room, was suddenly filled with the sound of my daughter's worst moment. It was Piper. From that first night, the high, thin, desperate wail, the one that ended in a wet, rattling gasp, the fever cry, the sound of her pain, recorded, saved, and sent. I was sick. I dropped the phone as if it were on fire, and the cry played on, looping, a 30-second recording of my failure. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I did what I had learned to do. I picked up my new phone, the clean one, and I called Valentino. He did not say hello. "What's wrong?" They have a recording." The line was silent, but it was the silence of a blade being unsheathed. "I am 10 minutes away." He was there in 7. He and Aviva, they did not knock. I heard the lock click open his lock, which he could apparently bypass, and they were inside. Aviva carried a silver briefcase. Valentino carried the night itself on his shoulders. I pointed at the old phone, still whispering Piper's cries onto the counter. "Make it stop. Please, make it stop." Valentino did not touch the phone. He simply looked at Aviva. She opened her briefcase, which was not filled with papers but with foam-lined electronics. She pulled out a small, black device, touched it to the phone, and the speaker went dead. "And they sent that," I whispered, "and this message." Valentino read the text, his face carved from stone. He did not get angry. He got still. A stillness that was far more terrifying than rage. "Aviva," he said. "My tiny apartment became their war room." Aviva unfolded a laptop that seemed to have too many screens. Valentino spoke quietly into his own phone. In an Italian so fast and fluid it sounded like a weapon. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Who are they?" "The Blue Salt Ledger," Valentino said, ending his call. He looked at me, his eyes dark. "It is not a who. It is an it, a blackmail collective. They do not deal in money. They deal in data. And they protect their data." "With what?" "Biometrics, but not fingerprints, not retinal scans, something more unique, more pure." He looked at Piper, sleeping in her cot, and his voice was raw, the spectral signature of a child's cry, the acoustic pattern of a human being in pure distress. It is as unique as a key. I felt the blood drain from my face. A key, and Piper's cry is a key." "One of many," Aviva said, her eyes on her screen. "They use them as voice-activated locks for their data vaults. They hoard leverage, financial records, medical files, illegal, anything, and they lock it all behind the sounds of stolen pain." "But how?" I whispered. "How did they get her cry?" Valentino's jaw tightened. He knew. He had known before he walked in. Aviva, as if on cue, turned her screen. A photograph, a man with a too-easy smile and eyes that were always looking for an exit. Keegan Holt, my ex-boyfriend, the man I had been stupid enough to believe for 6 long, wasted months. "Keegan," I breathed. "What does he have to do with this?" "He was a data mule for the Caldera Trust," Valentino said, his voice flat. He was in your apartment before me." The shame was so hot, so sudden, it almost brought me to my knees. He was here, when Piper was small. "He sold a batch of cry keys to the ledger," Valentino continued, his voice devoid of judgment. "Sounds he had collected. He was a partner of Caldera's. He sold them your daughter's voice, Mara. My old phone buzzed again on the counter. A new message. Valentino nodded at me. I read it aloud, my voice a dead monotone. They're threatening to release fake housing records, an anonymous tip to Meridian. They'll say I'm unfit, that I abandoned her, that the apartment is... Oh, God. What do they want? Valentino's voice was a steel bar. They want a new key. The old one is compromised. Maybe. They need a new one to open a specific vault. They're telling me, make the baby cry. 10 seconds. A high note of distress. Make her scream. They sent a secure upload link. I finally broke. A dry, racking sob tore out of my chest. It's my fault. I let him in. I let that monster near my daughter. No. Valentino's voice cut through my self-hatred. I looked up. He was standing in front of me. He had not moved. He was not blaming me. He sold you, Valentino said, his voice a low, lethal promise. That is his sin, not yours. We will not fix this with guilt. We will fix this with a better sound. I looked at him, confused. What? They need a key, Aviva said, not looking up from her analysis. The algorithm is looking for specific spectral peaks, a high-frequency wail, a low-frequency carrier of distress. It's a pattern. A pattern, Valentino repeated, a new, cold light in his eyes. So we give them one, not a key, a counter key, an acoustic antidote, something that matches the pattern but corrupts the lock. He walked over to the cot. Piper had woken from the voices, her blue eyes blinking in the dim light. She was not crying. She was just watching. We will not make her cry, Valentino said, and it was a vow. Not ever again. We will do the opposite, He looked at me. Make her laugh. What? Laugh. She needs to laugh. Aviva, get the recorder. High fidelity. I stared at him. Valentino, I can't just command her to laugh. She's a baby. Try. So I did. I picked Piper up. I nuzzled her neck. I made the stupid raspberry sound that sometimes worked. She just stared at me, her face serious, absorbing the tension in the room. Valentino let out an impatient huff. He got down on the floor, this man of shadows and steel, and he put his face level with hers. He wiggled his ears. Piper just stared. She's a very difficult audience, he muttered. A small, watery laugh escaped me. You look ridiculous. At the sound of my laugh, Piper's face broke into a wide, two-toothed grin. She giggled. Valentino's eyes snapped to mine. He saw it. He turned back to Piper. And this time, he did not wiggle his ears. He began to hum, soft and low. It was the lullaby. The one from the market, but he sang it in a fast, funny, staccato rhythm, playing peekaboo with his scarred hands. Piper shrieked, a high, clear, bell-like sound of pure, unadulterated joy. It was the anti-cry. That's it, Aviva said, her voice quiet, holding a small digital recorder. Keep her going. We spent the next 10 minutes making my daughter laugh. Valentino was the performer, I was the audience, and Piper was the star. We recorded her giggles, her shrieks of delight, her happy babbles. It is not enough, Aviva said finally, looking at the glowing waveform on her screen. It has the high frequencies, but it's missing the carrier. The lock is expecting a low end, a baseline of human sound. Valentino nodded. He understood. He leaned in close to the recorder, his eyes on Piper, who was now happily chewing on his tie. He did not sing the funny version. He sang the original, the low, rumbling, velvet lullaby he'd whispered in the market. Mix them, he ordered Aviva. Her laugh is the key. My voice is the carrier. Invert the phase, create a file that will match the algorithm, and then crash it. An acoustic null. As Aviva's fingers flew across her keyboard, merging the two sounds, her other screen was running a trace. The messages are being routed. she said. A daisy chain of public Wi-Fi, but the origin signal is strong. It's static. She brought up a map of Greyhaven, a red circle pulsing in the desolate western sector. The old St. Jude's Hospital, she said, the abandoned parking garage, they are on the roof. She looked at Valentino. It was a question. He was sending a file that was a weapon. They would know. It is a trap, she stated. They are using the Ledger's infrastructure, but this is Caldera. They want you there. Valentino watched the file Aviva was building, the sound of his own quiet voice, and my daughter's pure joy, twisted into a weapon of his own. He reached out, his fingers just barely brushing the back of my hand where it rested on the table. It was not a kiss. It was not an embrace. It was just contact. They expect fire, he said, his voice a whisper. They expect the man I was. But you have taught me there are ways to win without blood. He looked at Aviva. His face was set. Send them the file, he said. Let them open their vault. Sending the file was like pulling the pin on a grenade. The moment Aviva's finger hit the enter key, the apartment, my tiny, cramped world, became the most dangerous place on earth. We leave, Valentino said. It was not a suggestion. Aviva, the car, Mara, grab the child, nothing else. Leave and go, where what about my job, my stuff? They will be here in 20 minutes, Valentino said, his voice flat, already pulling me toward the door. Their stuff is replaceable. You are not. The drive was a silent, high-speed blur, away from the city, away from the harbor, away from the train tracks and the smell of diesel. We drove north for an hour, the dark sedan eating up the highway, until the concrete gave way to pine. The air itself changed, growing thinner, colder, and smelling of damp earth and evergreen. We turned onto a gravel road, the tires crunching, and pulled up to a house that was more shadow than structure, Eider House. It was a dark wood cabin, nestled against the black, still water of Loonfall Lagoon. It was the quietest place I'd ever been. Aviva did not come inside. I have the perimeter, she said, and like a ghost, she was gone, melting into the wall of trees that ringed the property. Valentino unlocked the door and held it open. Inside, it was the opposite of the city. It was warm. A massive stone fireplace took up one wall, a low fire already burning. The furniture was heavy, made of dark wood and worn, comfortable-looking leather. It smelled of pine resin and wood smoke. He showed me a small room off the main one. A portable, sturdy crib was already set up. She will be safe here, he said. I put Piper down. She had slept through the entire drive, a small, warm weight in my arms, in this new, quiet room. She sighed, her breath catching, and settled into a deep sleep. I walked back out to the main room. Valentino was standing by the fireplace, not feeding the flames, just watching them. The light danced on his face, making the angles seem softer. How did you know this would happen? I asked, my voice sounding too loud in the stillness. I did not, he said, turning to me, but I plan for what might. There is always a house. There is always a car. There is always a perimeter. This is your life, I whispered, pulling my thin cardigan tighter around me. Running, hiding. This is not running, he said, his voice a low rumble. This is waiting. We've sprung the trap. Now we wait for the rats to show their faces. And what am I, the cheese? The bitterness in my own voice surprised me. He looked at me, his eyes dark and unreadable. You are the reason for the trap. You are the one who does not get hurt. A sudden, fierce gust of wind slammed against the cabin, making the heavy glass windows rattle. Rain began to lash against the roof, a hard, driving rhythm that drowned out the silence. The first storm of the season had arrived. I'm afraid, I whispered, the confession torn out of me by the wind. I am so afraid, Valentino. Not for me, but I'm dragging her, my baby, into into gunfire and data vaults and, hiding. I'm a mother. I'm supposed to be safe, and I'm just running. He didn't move for a long time. The only sound was the fire and the storm. "When I was 11, he said, his voice so quiet I had to strain to hear it. "My mother, she left me on Pier 11. She told me to wait, that she was just going to get cigarettes." My breath caught. "I waited," he continued, his eyes on the fire. "I waited for 2 days. I learned to count the boats. I learned to be small. When the police finally came, I did not trust them. When the state came, I did not trust them. I learned that day. Safety is not something someone gives you. It is something you build with steel and secrets and boundaries." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were not the eyes of a mafia boss. They were the eyes of a little boy, abandoned on a pier. "I am not just protecting you, Mara. I am building a boundary. It is the only thing I know how to do." The lights in the cabin flickered, buzzed, and then died, plunging the room into a deep, primal darkness, lit only by the dancing, orange flames from the hearth. I shivered, the cold of the room seaming into my bones. "They cut the power." "No," he said. "It is the storm. The lines out here are old." I wrapped my arms around myself, but the cold was too deep. I was cold with his story. I was cold with the fear. He stepped away from the fire, toward a large wooden chest. He took out a thick, heavy wool blanket, but he did not hand it to me. He came to me, standing in front of me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. He unfolded the blanket, and he did not just give it to me. He wrapped it around my shoulders. His hands lingered for a second, his fingers brushing my neck, sending a jolt through me that had nothing to do with the cold. "Better," he whispered. I could only nod, my throat tight. The wool was soft, and it smelled like him, like smoke and that clean, expensive scent he carried. "Valentino," I breathed. He was so close. The firelight was on his face. I could see the tiny lines around his eyes. "You're shaking," he said. "Not from the cold, not anymore." His gaze dropped to my mouth. He did not move, but his eyes were asking. They were asking for permission, for the right to cross this last, final boundary. I gave it. I did not move. I did not speak. I just met his gaze. He leaned in, slow as the tide. This was not the kitchen. Startled and surprised. This was intentional. This was a choice. His lips met mine, and it was a homecoming. It was deeper than before, warm and firm, a sharing of breath in the storm-dark room. His hand, the one with the scar, moved from my shoulder. It slid up my back, not to pull me closer, not to demand, but to hold, to support me. His fingers were spread wide against my shoulder blades, a solid, respectful weight. I felt safe, not just protected, but safe. I leaned into him, my forehead coming to rest against his. My own hands, which had been clutching the blanket, came up to rest on his chest, right over his heart. It was beating, slow and steady. He was not the boy on the pier. He was the man who controlled the boats. I started, my voice trembling. No one has ever... I've always been a problem to be fixed, a debt to be paid. I have never felt seen, not like this, not as a whole person who is just wanted. He did not speak. He just held me, his breath warm on my forehead, his hand solid on my back. He was just listening. From the other room, a small sound, a whimper, Piper, stirring in her sleep, disturbed by the storm. Valentino, in one smooth, instantaneous motion, pulled back. But not away. He pulled back, his hand leaving my back, his eyes full of not guilt, not annoyance, but attention. He turned his head, listening. The whimper faded. Silence returned. He looked back at me, and the corner of his mouth twitched, that small, devastating smile. "Our number one priority," he whispered. My heart, which had been aching, suddenly felt full. He had stopped. For her. He had put her, and me as her mother, before. This before us. He did not try to kiss me again. He took my hand. "Come, Theo," he said. "The couch is comfortable. We will watch the storm." We sat, not like lovers, but like partners, tangled in the same blanket, my head on his shoulder, his arm a heavy, warm weight around me, and we talked. We whispered in the dark, the fire crackling, the storm raging outside. We did not talk of Caldera or Keegan or data vaults. I asked him about the saffron. He asked me about my job. I told him I wanted to take an online course in bookkeeping. He told me about a preschool, one near the Good Park, that had flexible hours. We talked about schedules. We talked about quiet. We talked. When I woke, the storm had passed. The cabin was filled with a thin, milky gray light. My neck was stiff. I was still on the couch, Valentino's arm still around me. He was awake. He was watching the lagoon. The water was a sheet of glass, the mist rising like steam. I watched him, his profile sharp against the dawn, and I knew it was not the power. It was not the money. It was not the dangerous, dark world he lived in. It was the fact that he was the only man I had ever met who understood boundaries. The boundary of my doorway in the tenement, the boundary of his hand hovering an inch from my skin in the kitchen, the boundary of a mother's priority, which he had not crossed, but had stepped back to protect. I loved him, not for the walls he built around me, but for the one he had, in this small, dark cabin finally let me inside. We returned to Greyhaven under a bruised, chemical yellow sky. The silence in the car was heavier than the storm at Loon Fall Lagoon. The cabin had been a pause, a breath held in the middle of a scream. The city was the scream itself. We were not back in my apartment for 10 minutes before the news broke. I saw it on the small television in the liquor store across the street, the images flickering through my grimy window, a building, blackened and smoking, the Meridian Residential Control Headquarters. My phone, the new one, lit up. It was Aviva, in the car parked on the street below. Turn on the news. I did, my hands shaking. The reporter, standing too close to the yellow tape, was using a word, bombing. She was talking about domestic terror. She was talking about sources pointing to a violent escalation in the ongoing port dispute. Then, a grainy security photo filled the screen. It was Valentino, walking out of the Copper Finch from a week ago. "The Orchid Union," the reporter said, her voice dripping with implication, led by the reclusive Valentino Carminati, has been named as a primary person of interest. "They are framing you," I breathed, watching the street for Aviva. "Of course they are," Valentino's voice said from behind me. He was standing in the doorway of my tiny kitchen, his face a mask of cold fury. "Caldera just declared war, not on me, on the city, and they're using my face as the flag. You cannot fight this," I said. It is the news." "No," he said, his voice flat. "It is a story, and it is a bad one." His phone buzzed. He looked at it. "Aviva." He put it on speaker. They were sloppy. Aviva's voice, crisp and digital, filled the room. The blast was C4, but the detonation was focused on the third-floor records room, an attempt to destroy leverage, but they did not scrub the service logs for the building. A file appeared on Valentino's phone, an image. It was a time-stamped invoice. "Sani Sweep Industrial Cleaning," Aviva said. "A registered shell company of the Caldera Trust. They were in the building, on that specific floor, for 1 hour last night, an hour before the explosion. I have already sent this, and the corresponding corporate filings, to an independent journalist at the Greyhaven Post. The story will be obsolete by morning." He closed the phone. The news was already forgotten. "Go to work, Marianne," he said. "What now after, and that, especially now, you are a single mother working in a thrift shop. You are invisible. You are perfect. They will not look at you. They will only look at me. Go." So I went. It was the strangest feeling. Walking into the second sun, the bell over the door chiming, the familiar scent of mothballs and old paper greeting me. It was like stepping back into a life that no longer fit. Aviva's replacement, a quiet man named Leo, sat in a parked sedan across the street. I went to the back room, to the mountain of black plastic bags that was my job. I sorted a pair of worn shoes, a box of chipped china, and then a bag I remembered. It was heavy, a donation from weeks ago. Before the first phone call, before the world had tilted, I recognized the ugly, floral print on the bag. I had tagged it myself. I pulled it open and the contents spilled out, a heavy, handmade quilt. My breath hitched. I knew this quilt. It was Keegan's, his grandmother's. He had left it at my place once, and I had donated it in a fit of rage after he disappeared. The stitching was clumsy, the colors garish, and on one corner a small, quilted star. He used to joke that his grandmother was half blind, and I saw it now. The star was lopsided. The thread was a different color, a dark, heavy-duty thread. It was not a repair, it was a pocket. My hands were shaking. I looked around. The shop was empty. I went to the small employee bathroom, locked the door, and pulled a seam ripper from my sewing kit. The dark thread was tough, but it finally gave way. Inside the cotton batting, it was not money, it was not drugs. It was a thin book, the kind used for keeping ledgers, its cover black. I opened it. My mind could not, at first, understand it was a registry, a list of names, city council members, Port Authority officials, even a judge, and next to their names, a series of numbers and issue dates, Gray Haven Municipal Improvement Bonds. But the numbers were wrong. They were sequential. They were fake. This was it. This was the real leverage. Not my rent, not the tenants. This was what Caldera was using to blackmail the city itself. Keegan had not just been a data mule. He had been the treasurer. And in his paranoia, he had hidden his only insurance policy inside his grandmother's quilt. I did not call Valentino. This was not his, this was mine. I thought about his moves, the forged document that had saved me from eviction, the counterfile that had crashed the Blue Salt servers. He did not use bullets. He used the system. I called a lawyer, not one from a bus stop advertisement, a woman who specialized in tenant rights. I met her at a coffee shop 4 blocks away, within sight of Leo's car. I slid the book across the table. She opened it, read one page, and her face went the color of her cream-filled donut. "Where?" she whispered. "Did you get this?" "I found it in a box of old clothes," I said, "and I want to give it to the North Point Tribunal, today." "The tribunal?" She looked terrified. "They were the federal boogeymen, the ones who cleaned up cities. You can just give this to the police." "The police are in that book," I said, my voice steady. "I have 2 conditions. First, I am anonymous, I am a ghost. You are the one who brings it to them. Second, in exchange for this bomb. The tribunal freezes all active residential investigations by Meridian Control, pending their own review, especially in the Harbor Line Keys." She stared at me. "You are trading all this for a rent freeze." "I am protecting the other mothers," I said, "the ones who cannot fight back." She nodded, a new, sharp respect in her eyes. "They will agree. This is the case they have been waiting for." When I told Valentino that night, he was silent for a full minute. He simply stood in my kitchen watching me, as if seeing me for the first time. "You," he said, his voice a low, stunned rumble, "have just disarmed the entire Caldera organization, and you tied my hands in the same motion." "What?" "The tribunal. They are clean, which means they are also watching me. I cannot move. If I strike Caldera now, it looks like a mob war, and the tribunal will come down on us both. You have forced me to stay out of it. You have weakened my entire team. And it was the most brilliant move I have ever seen." He was standing close. He did not touch me, but I wanted him to. The bell over the shop door jingled the next day. It was Keegan. My heart stopped, then hammered. He looked like a ghost. His eyes were wild, his clothes slept in. He looked broken. "Mara," he whispered. his eyes darting to the street. God, Mara, I am so sorry. My hand, moving on its own, slid to my keychain, a gift from Aviva, a small metal raindrop. Press twice for audio, she'd said. Twice to stop. I pressed it twice. What do you want, Keegan? I am in so much trouble, V, he said, grabbing my arm. His hands were cold and damp. They're cleaning house. Mara, after the bombing, Caldera. They're cutting all loose ends, and I am a loose end. You sold my daughter's cry, I said, my voice dead. I had to. It was just data, look. I can make it right. I know how to stop them. All of them. How? He leaned in, his breath sour. The Harbor Line Gala, tonight, at the museum. It is a blue salt event. Caldera's top men will be there. And the Fringe Vault. The what? The server, the real server, the one that holds everything. The audio keys, the blackmail, the original of that bond book. It is air-gapped. They are moving it tonight. I am going to get it. I am going to erase my files. I am going to expose them all. You have to help me. I'm not helping you, I said, pulling my arm free. His face changed. The desperate, pleading look vanished, replaced by the cold, assessing look I remembered. Then stay out of my way, he snarled. He turned and ran from the shop, the bell mocking him on his way out. I pressed the keychain twice. Valentino listened to the recording, his face granite. The Fringe Vault, he is right. It is their entire kingdom. On one movable server, he is not going to steal it. He is being invited. It is a trap to liquidate him and anyone else who knows. Aviva will go, he said. She will acquire the server. No, I said. Valentino stopped. He knows me. They know me. I am the mother of the cry key. I am the reason the tribunal is moving. I am already the bait, and I am done hiding in safe houses. Mara, this is not a discussion. You will be at the lagoon with your daughter. And if I am, I said, my voice shaking but firm, they will know you are involved, but if I am there, as just Mara, a single mom, trying to get her ex-boyfriend to pay child support, I am just part of the noise. I am the distraction. They will watch me. They will not. I finished. Be watching Aviva. The silence in the room was a living thing. He was at war with himself. I could see it. If I go, if I am the bait, I choose the stage, and I choose the lights. He walked toward me, and he did not touch me, but he reached up, his fingers brushing the small, raindrop-shaped stone at my neck, the necklace he had left for me at the cabin. You will be on the main floor. You will not move. You will not speak to Keegan. Aviva will be in the rafters. The second she has the server, you are out. And if he comes to me, if the plan breaks... This, he said, his thumb brushing the cool, gray stone. This is your signal. You touch it twice. Fall back, and I will come and get you. I do not care what is happening. I do not care who is watching. You signal, and it is over. And you will respect it, I whispered. You will not lock me away. His eyes were dark, a promise of a storm. I will, he said. I promise. The Harbor Line Keys Museum was a cathedral of glass and steel, lit up like a jewel against the black water. The gala was in full swing, a symphony of clinking champagne flutes and the low, confident murmur of old money. The air was thick with expensive perfume, 1,000 miles and $1 million away from my apartment. I clutched Piper, who was dressed in a soft, cream-colored sleeper, one of the cashmere ones from Aviva's donation. I was wearing the only nice thing I owned, a simple black dress I'd found in the second son's discard pile, mended and pressed by my own hand. My raindrop necklace felt cold against my skin. Look at the lights, baby, I whispered to Piper, my voice trembling. You look beautiful, Mara, a voice said. Valentino, and he was standing by the grand staircase, and the sight of him stole the air from my lungs. He was in a black tuxedo, minimalist, perfect. It was not a costume. It was his armor. His dark hair was brushed back, and his eyes, in the warm, glittering light, were not cold. They were on fire. They were not watching the room. They were not watching for Caldera. They were watching me. He did not touch me. He did not cross the small space between us. Aviva is on the balcony, dressed as an audio-visual technician. Leo is with the waitstaff. You are not alone. Where is it? I whispered. He gave a slight nod toward the East Wing. The Digital Futures exhibit. They are calling it a charitable donation booth. I saw it, a sleek, modern kiosk of white, glowing plastic, set up under a banner that read, Blue Salt Ledger, a voice for the future. People were walking up, laughing, speaking their names into a microphone, and pledging money. A voice for the future. They were literally stealing them. Walk past it, Valentino said, his voice a low command. Do not stop. Let them see you. And Piper. Piper will do what she does best, he said, and a ghost of a smile touched his lips. She will be herself. I took a deep breath, my hand on the raindrop. I began to walk. As I neared the glowing booth, a man in a crisp white shirt smiled at me. Ma'am, would you like to pledge a voice donation for the Children's Fund? I don't have anything to donate, I said, the lie coming easily. Just your voice. Ma'am, a promise of support. He gestured to the microphone. Piper, sensing my tension, let out a small, fussy cry. Oh, I'm sorry, she's, The man's smile tightened. His eyes flickered to a small, green light on his console. It had not lit up. I turned away, and just as I did, I tickled Piper under her chin. It's okay, baby, it's okay, we're going. Piper, her fussy moment forgotten, let out a high, clear shriek of laughter. The bell-like sound from the cabin. The man's console, I saw from the corner of my eye, flashed red. Pattern mismatch. My heart hammered. It was real. They were scanning us. I kept walking, my heels clicking on the marble, and I did not look back. I made my way to a deserted alcove, my back to the wall, and I watched. Valentino was across the room. Accepting a glass of champagne he did not drink, his gaze a steel line connecting us, in the rafters. I caught a glint of light of Aviva, moving into position above the booth. Then I saw him. Keegan. He was wearing a rented tux that was too tight in the shoulders. He was sweating, his eyes darting. He saw me, and like a rat to a piece of cheese, he came. Mara, he hissed, grabbing my elbow and pulling me deeper into the shadows of the alcove. What are you doing here? I told you to stay away. My hand went to the raindrop on my keychain. Twice. I pressed it twice. The audio was live. I needed to talk to you, Keegan, I said, letting my voice shake, letting the tears well up. I'm so scared, that man, that Carminati, Him? Keegan's face was a mix of terror and bitter jealousy. He's here, isn't he? They're all here. Caldera, Blue Salt. Keegan, please, I begged, pitching my voice to the perfect note of desperation. They're going to take Piper, the city. They're building a case. I need that money you promised me. The child support. He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. Money. You think this is about money. This is about my life. They have my name, Mara, my name, tied to everything. Then fix it, I cried, just a little too loud. Shh. He pulled me closer, his sour breath on my face. I am. Look, he pointed to the booth. That's it, the fringe vault. It's in the base of that machine. They're moving it at 11, but I can wipe the files, my files, but I need a key. A key, a voice, Mara, a pure distress signal, the one I had, your new boyfriend. He corrupted it. The file he sent, it crashed the local servers. He looked at me, his eyes snake-like. But the main vault, it's still locked, and you can open it. Me how? Not you, her, he nodded at Piper, who was sleeping on my shoulder. That's what they want. They'll be here. The Caldera men. They want me to get a new key from you, a clean one. He grabbed my wrist. Just 10 seconds. Mara, that's all I need. Pinch her. Make her cry. 10 seconds of her crying into that microphone and I can wipe my name. I'll be free. We'll be free. I'll give you whatever you want." I stared at him. The man I had once thought I loved, asking me to hurt my child. I can't," I whispered, pulling back in genuine horror. "Keegan, I can't." "Do it," he snarled, his mask of desperation falling away, showing the monster beneath. He grabbed my shoulder, pushing me toward the booth. "You are going to do it, or I am going to tell them. Tell Carminati all about us." "Mr. Holt," Valentino's voice. It was not loud, but it cut through the music, the chatter, the entire gala. Keegan froze. Valentino was walking toward us, his hands in his pockets, his face calm. "I believe you are bothering my guest." Keegan's face went white. He looked from Valentino to me, and then to the booth. He saw his chance, his one, last, desperate move. "Now," Keegan shouted, not at me, but at the man in the white shirt. "Activate the port! She's here, record her!" The man at the booth, a Blue Salt operative, saw Valentino approaching. He panicked. His eyes met Keegan's. He nodded. He hit a sequence of keys, activating the primary recording function, the one designed to capture the new key. The green light on the console turned a deep, solid red, awaiting audio input. Keegan grinned, a mad, triumphant look. "Cry, Mara scream, give them what they want." He had given the signal, he had opened the port, he thought he was trapping me. In the rafters, Aviva, holding a device that looked like a simple Wi-Fi router, pressed a single button. She was not hacking the booth, she was joining its network. And at the booth, the man's console flickered, the awaiting audio input message vanished. It was replaced by "File transfer in progress." The man's eyes went wide. "What? I'm not... It's not recording, it's receiving, a sound, not from the gala, from the booth's own speakers, a high, clear, bell-like laugh. Piper's laugh, woven with a low, rumbling, masculine hum. Valentino's lullaby, the acoustic antidote. It played for 3 seconds. The lights on the booth flickered, from white to red to green to white. Then, with a sound like a circuit breaker popping, the entire kiosk went dark. The glowing white plastic was dead. The algorithm was not just corrupted, it was erased. "No!" Keegan screamed. "Now," Valentino said, his voice quiet. Aviva dropped from the rafters, landing as silently as a cat behind the dead booth, the Blue Salt operative, still staring at his blank screen. Never saw her. A flicker of motion. He slumped, unconscious. Aviva opened a panel at the base, and her hands, fast and sure, unclipped a single, black, metal-encased hard drive, the fringe vault. She was gone, out a service exit, before the first guest had even turned to see what the noise was. What did you do?" Keegan was backing away. And at that exact moment, the main doors of the museum burst open, not with a bang, but with a silent, terrifying efficiency. Men and women in dark blue windbreakers, with North Point Judicial Police in stark white letters on the back. They were not carrying assault rifles, they were carrying warrants. They moved past the guests, past Valentino, and swarmed the dead booth. Hands, Blue Salt Ledger, you are all in violation." It was over in 10 seconds. No shots, no panic, just the clean, quiet click of handcuffs. Kagasoline, however, was a rat. He saw the net and he bolted. He shoved a waiter, spilling a tray of champagne, and ran, not for the main door, but for the service hallway Aviva had just used. Valentino watched him go. His eyes were hard, his jaw set, but he did not move. He did not chase. He had promised me. Keegan stopped at the door. He turned, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He looked at me. "He'll never forgive you!" he screamed, his voice echoing in the suddenly silent room. "The tribunal, you brought them. You ruined everything. He's a monster. Mara and you just..." You just signed his death warrant." He was gone. Valentino did not look at the disappearing coward. He did not look at the North Point officers. He looked at me. He had not moved. He was still standing 10 feet away, honoring the boundary. He just watched me, his dark eyes asking the only question that mattered. "Are you all right?" My hand, shaking, went to the raindrop at my neck. I did not tap it. I just held it. The 6 o'clock news the next morning was not about a bombing. It was about the gala takedown. The anchor, looking stunned, read a statement from the North Point Tribunal announcing the arrest of the Blue Salt Ledger's entire executive team and the seizure of the Fringe Vault, a server now famous for containing enough blackmail material to sink the Caldera Trust and half the city government for a generation. The news then cut to a related story, the Meridian bombing. The independent journalist at the Greyhaven Post had released his findings. The story was not about Valentino Carminati. It was about an industrial cleaning company, a shell corporation for the Caldera Trust, and a clear-cut case of arson and evidence tampering. In one night, Valentino's name was cleared, and the true enemy, Blue Salt and Caldera, had been dragged, blinking into the harsh, unforgiving light of day. To win a war, you must first survive it, but to survive, sometimes, you must go to war. The news was a bloodbath. Caldera, cornered by the North Point Tribunal, its assets frozen, its name toxic, was lashing out like a dying animal. It was no longer about profit. It was about scorched earth. The first report came at 5 p.m. A container ferry, the Greyhaven Pride, fully loaded and docked at Pier 13, had been compromised. An anonymous threat, a bomb. The port was in chaos, the city on the verge of panic. Caldera was sending its last furious message. Then, my old phone lit up, the one from Keegan. A single text message. "I have her, Pier 13. Come alone or she's on that boat." Underneath, a GPS ping, a small blue dot pulsing right on the end of the pier. My blood did not just run cold, it evaporated. I was empty. I couldn't breathe. I showed the phone to Valentino. He was standing by my window, watching the city light up with the red and blue of emergency vehicles. He did not look at the phone. He just looked at me. "She is safe," he said, his voice a low, calm anchor in my hurricane. "Aviva has her. They are in a reinforced bunker, 20 miles west of here. In the hills, Piper is asleep." The relief was so profound, so absolute, it buckled my knees. I slid to the floor, the phone clattering on the linoleum. A trap, I whispered, the word tasting like ash. He's using her. Again, he's using a fake to get me. Valentino's eyes were dark, a cold, final calculation. "He's not getting you. He's getting me." He turned, checking the simple, deadly-looking pistol he'd had tucked in the small of his back. "I am going. Aviva will lock this apartment. You will not." "No." He stopped, his hand on the gun. I stood up, my legs shaking, but my voice was the steadiest thing in the room. "You don't get to say that. Not anymore. Look at me." He turned, and he saw. I was not the terrified girl from the tenement. I was not the woman from the kitchen. I was the person who had just walked out of the fire. "You promised," I said. "You promised you would respect my signal. I am not giving it." "Mara, this is not a game. This is a bomb and a rabid dog." "I know," I said, "and he is my rabid dog. He thinks he's luring me. He's luring the mother. He's not expecting me. The person I am now, he's not expecting us." The silence in the room was absolute. He was at war with every protective instinct he had. "So," he said, his voice a raw whisper, "the choice." I had never heard him sound like this, defeated and proud, all at once. "Either," he said, "I go alone, and I will burn that pier to the waterline to find him, or, I finished, we go together, but we go according to my plan. I am the bait. Valentino, I know how he thinks. I know what he fears." He looked at me, at my secondhand dress, at my cheap, worn-out shoes. Then he looked in my eyes. He nodded. Once. Your plan, he said. Piper was safe. That was the only reality. Aviva had confirmed. A text message with a photo of my daughter sleeping peacefully, oblivious, in a steel-lined room. My weapon was a mess. A repurposed radio from the thrift shop, a tangle of copper wire, 2 9-volt batteries, and a microphone I'd salvaged from a broken karaoke machine. It was ugly. It was absurd. What is it? Valentino asked, his own preparations consisting of small, deadly, efficient pieces of metal. It's a broadband radio frequency jammer, I said, soldering a final wire. Keegan will have a remote detonator, a dead man's switch, something. It will run on a radio frequency. This, I held up the tangle, is not subtle. It will not be clean, but it will throw so much noise into the air. It will disrupt the signal. It will not stop it, but it might. Delay it. Buy us seconds. He did not question me. He just watched. Pier 13 was a graveyard of steel. The wind was a living thing, screaming off the water, carrying the taste of salt and fear. The massive container ferry was a black wall against the city lights. All the lights on the pier were out, except for one, solitary, sodium vapor lamp at the very end, casting a sick orange glow. Keegan was standing under it. I knew you'd come, he shouted over the wind, his voice high and thin. Where is he? Is he watching? Is he listening? I'm alone, Keegan, I shouted back, walking slowly, the heavy, homemade jammer in a canvas bag on my shoulder. Where is my daughter? He laughed, a terrible, broken sound. Your daughter, she's everywhere. She's the key to everything. He was standing next to a large metal control panel for one of the loading cranes. He had a small, handheld device, a radio. He never loved me. Keegan whimpered, his face a mask of sweat and terror. Caldera, they were just using me, just like you, just like him. Give me my daughter, Keegan. No. He held up the radio. He's gone. Caldera is gone, but he left me a present, a severance package. They said if I was going to go down, I should make a statement. He held up a small black cassette recorder, my old recorder. He wants this, you know, Keegan sneered. Valentino. He wants this, a final key, a backup, Caldera's last, stupid little trap, a pressure-sensitive bomb on that boat, and this is the disarm code. He pressed play. Piper's cry, the original, the wet, gasping, fever cry. It shrieked out over the wind. 10 seconds, Keegan said, his eyes wild. He said, 10 seconds of the cry, and it arms a new detonator, a failsafe. And I get to choose. Keegan, I said, my voice low, stepping closer. He lied to you. They all lied to you. Shut up. He's not your father. Caldera is not your family. And I said, stopping 10 feet from him, am not your girl. I loved you, he whispered, his face crumpling. She was our baby. And there it was, the final pathetic lie. No, Keegan, I said, my voice cutting through the wind, cold and sharp as glass. You never listen. You never heard my daughter cry, because she is not your daughter. He froze. She was never yours. You were just a man in my apartment, a man who was convenient. You were a tool, Keegan for me, and then for Caldera. You've always been a tool. The shock on his face was absolute, the final narrative of his life, his last pathetic justification, was gone. You're lying. She's right. Valentino. He stepped out from the shadow of a massive steel container, his hands empty, his palms out. He was not wearing body armor. He was just in his black Henley. It's over, Valentino said, his voice calm, reasonable, carrying over the wind. Keegan, North Point is on the way. You have one last choice, the real choice, not this. Theater. Keegan looked from me, the woman who had just destroyed him, to Valentino, the man he could never be. "You can have a life," Valentino said, taking a step. "A quiet, miserable, concrete-walled life in a witness protection program. You testify against what's left. You disappear, or..." He nodded at the ferry. "You can sink with the ship you chose." Keegan looked at the radio in his hand. He looked at the recorder. He looked at me. His face was a terrible, blank mask. Hatred, pure and absolute, had burned away every other emotion. "If I'm sinking," he whispered. Everyone, Zena." He slammed his thumb down on the detonator. A deafening klaxon roared to life from the ferry, a deep, vibrating whoop, whoop, whoop. And on the detonator in Keegan's hand, a bright, red, digital timer lit up. 60 seconds. "Valentino," I screamed. But I was already moving. I ripped the jammer from my bag and slammed the on switch. A high-pitched, agonizing squeal cut the air. The lights on the pier flickered, the digital timer in Keegan's hand. It stuttered. 59 and 59 mean 58. "It's working," I shrieked. "The frequency. It's fighting the signal. It's not stopping it. It's delaying it." The timer was a blur, 57 and 56, 57 and 55. Keegan, in a fit of rage, threw the useless detonator at me and ran, disappearing into the maze of containers. The klaxon was still blaring, the water was rising, the tide coming in fast, surging over the edge of the pier. The red, digital countdown, now running on its own internal timer, was on a screen on the side of the loading crane. 45, 44, 43. Valentino did not run. He did not look at the bomb. He did not look for Keegan. He looked at me. His face was calm. His chest was rising and falling. In time with the boats, he was waiting for my signal, waiting for my command. The entire burning, sinking pier was waiting for my choice. I nodded. The timer read 34 seconds. He did not wait for a second confirmation. He moved. He was not a man. He was a shadow, a blur of motion, vaulting the steel rail, dropping to the lower gangway just as the rising tide crashed over his feet. The klaxon wailed. 30 seconds. He was under the massive container, hanging from a girder, the spray drenching him. A flash of lightning split the sky, a sudden, blue-white illumination. I saw him clearly. His left hand was braced on the steel, his right sleeve was pulled taut, and the scar, the silvery white line I had touched in the kitchen, was stark against his skin. The memory of the boy on the pier. But it did not make him hesitate. It did not make him slow. His fingers, fast and sure, found the panel beneath the container. He ripped the cover away. 22 seconds. "He cannot stop it!" The voice was a shriek. "Keegan!" He burst from the maze of containers, his face a mask of absolute, insane rage. He was holding the small, black, fake GPS tracker. "He cannot stop it. She is still here. She is the key." He slammed his thumb onto the tracker. It was not a tracker. It was a secondary activation, a panic button, a fallback. He held up the cassette recorder. "He's trying to disarm it, but I am arming it. This is the failsafe, the backup. It needs the acoustic key." He pressed play. Piper's cry, the original. The first night, the sound of her fever, her pain, the wet, gasping wail, blasted from the pier's emergency speakers, overriding the klaxon. It was the sound of my nightmare. "It needs the cry," Keegan screamed, holding the recorder high. "It needs the distress signal to arm." But I had my own key. I ripped the karaoke microphone from my bag, the wire still connected to the system. I would not let the last sound this pier heard be the sound of her pain. I opened my mouth and I sang. It was not a song. It was the lullaby. The one he had hummed in the market, the one we had used in the apartment. My voice was thin, raw, and terrified. But I sang the notes of his history, the Italian melody that meant home, The counter key, the acoustic antidote. My voice, woven with the memory of Piper's laugh and the feel of Valentino's hand, poured into the microphone. On the speakers, the two sounds met, the desperate, feverish wail and the low, steady lullaby. They clashed in the air, the wail faltered, digitized, and broke apart, turning to static. The lullaby held. The system died. The speakers went silent. On the side of the crane, the red timer, which had been stuck at 12 seconds, flashed a brilliant green, and then it vanished. The klaxon stopped. The silence that fell was absolute. It was the sound of the end. Then, new sounds, sirens, not the city police, the deep, heavy thrum of North Point vehicles. They flooded the pier, headlights cutting through the darkness, trapping us in their beams. Hands in the air, do not move. Keegan stood frozen, the dead recorder in one hand, the useless tracker in the other. He looked at the line of federal officers. He looked at the dark, surging water. He made his choice. He dropped everything and put his hands on his head. He chose to live. I watched them lead him away. His shoulders slumped. He was already talking, his mouth moving, trading his last secret, the bribe list, for a deal. I saw Aviva, standing in the shadows with a man in a vigilant counsel suit. They were coordinating. Caldera was finished, arrested by the law, not by the mob. And then I saw him, Valentino. He was walking up from the lower deck, soaked to the skin, his hair plastered to his forehead. He stopped just outside the ring of flashing red and blue lights. He stood in the shadows, letting the federal officers have the crime scene. He had kept his promise. No blood. He had let the legal system finish the fight. I ran. My legs, which had felt like stone, were suddenly light. I ran past the agents, past the lights, and into the darkness where he stood. I hit his chest, my arms wrapping around him, my face burying in his damp shirt. He was solid. He was real. His arms came around me, holding me tight. "It is over." He breathed into my hair. "It is," I whispered. I pulled back, my hands on his face, my thumbs on his cheekbones. "I kept waiting," I said, my voice shaking. "From the kitchen into the cabin. I kept waiting for the bill." "Mara?" "I do not need the boss," I said, my voice finding its strength. "I do not need the Orchid Union. I need the man who knows when to stop, the man who stops. For me." His dark eyes searched mine. A federal agent walked past, his radio crackling. "Sir, ma'am, you cannot stay here. This is a secure area." Valentino did not look at him. He just nodded. His gaze locked on mine. He took my hand. He did not lead me to his car. He led me to a small, forgotten dockworkers' booth, a tiny shack of wood and glass hidden in the shadows. Inside, he closed the door. The world went silent. The sirens, the wind, the shouting. It was all muted. It was just us. We did not speak. We just moved. I wrapped my arms around his neck, and his mouth found mine. It was not the gentle, respectful kiss of the kitchen. It was not the slow, healing hold of the cabin. This was a claiming. It was deep and desperate and breathless. It was the taste of salt and rain, and finally, his hands were in my hair, on my back, pulling me so close I could feel his heart hammering against my chest. "Mara," he breathed, his voice a raw sound against my lips. I clung to him, my hands on his chest, feeling the solid, living proof that he was real, that we were safe. He pulled back just an inch, his forehead resting against mine. His breath was warm. His eyes were closed. Are you... Even now, he was asking. "Yes," I whispered. I tilted my head, leading, bringing his mouth back to mine. Slower this time. I set the pace. This was not a rescue. This was a choice. We kissed, a long, slow exploration. His hands, so strong, were impossibly gentle. His thumbs tracing my jaw, my neck, as if memorizing the feel of me. In the distance, a fairy horn, long and low, vibrated through the small shack. We both stopped. We pulled back. and we looked at each other in the darkness. A small, startled, watery laugh escaped me. He smiled, that rare, devastating smile that reached his eyes. A low, soft laugh rumbled in his chest. We were alive. We were ridiculous. We were here. He did not kiss me again. He just held me. He wrapped his arms around me, and I buried my face in his chest, and we just stood, holding each other in the dark as the city finally went quiet. The next morning, I went to the North Point Tribunal. I signed a statement identifying Keegan's voice, identifying the quilt. My testimony was given in exchange for a full, binding order protecting every tenant in the Harbor Line Keys from eviction. When I went back to the Second Sun, a truck was parked outside. Orchid Care was on the side. They were unloading warm coats and boxes of formula. Aviva, in cargo pants, was directing them. An anonymous corporate sponsor, she said, not looking at me, a tiny smile on her face. They are repurposing the old church, a community center, and a self-defense class for single mothers. We went back to Eider House. The peace treaty with the Vigilant Council was signed. The news said the Orchid Union was restructuring, selling off its darker assets, moving into logistics, food, real estate, building. I was in the main room, watching Piper. She was 10 months old. She was pulling herself up on the window ledge, her tiny fingers splayed on the glass, looking at the lagoon. "Look at you," I whispered. Valentino came up behind me. He was just watching her. "She is strong," he said. "She is," I said. "She is a fighter." "No," he said, his voice soft. "She is a little harbor, a safe place." Piper, hearing his voice, turned. She gave him a wide, two-toothed grin. She let go of the ledge. She took one wobbly, triumphant step, and she fell. He was there before I was, scooping her up, his gaze melting, the ice breaking. He was just a man, holding a child. That night, we stood on the porch, watching the sunset bleed over the horizon. Piper was asleep inside. I did what I had done in the kitchen. I laid my hand on his chest. His heart was slow, steady, the rhythm of the boats. He looked down at my hand, then at me. "It really was," he said, his voice low. "A wrong number." I smiled. I leaned my head against his shoulder. "No," I whispered. "It was not. Fate just pressed the right key." Thank you so much for listening to this story. I am so curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please, if you enjoyed this, subscribe to the channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and like this video. It helps so much. And if you really loved it, please press that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.